This meeting is now called to order. I am Melanie Williams, and I'm the chair of the HART Finance and Audit Committee. Welcome to the August 16th, 2021 Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Please look at your screens of your devices. An image of the flag is displayed. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Pettit. Will you take roll call, please?
Committee Member Kemp? Here. Committee Member Knight?
Here.
Committee Member Overman? Committee Member Schussler?
Here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair Williams?
Here.
And we have in attendance Director Eric Johnson. He is a non-voting member, but he's in attendance today.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. The rules for meeting participation and roles and responsibilities of the Finance and Audit Committee meeting are provided in the back for your information. Next, we're moving on to Section 2 of the packet, where we will ask for an approval of minutes from the May 17th, 2021 and June 21st, 2021 Finance and Audit Committee hybrid meetings. Are there any questions or comments, corrections? Is there?
So moved to move.
Thank you. Second? Is there a second?
A second for the minutes.
A second.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Kemp and second by Director Knight. Is everyone in favor? Say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Say no. Very good.
Just a point of order.
Yes,
Some of the people out there that were watching the first two committee meetings are not getting this one on YouTube somehow. I just thought I'd mention that. I've checked twice. They were trying to watch and can't.
Commissioner Kemp, I could hear you, but I couldn't hear anybody else.
Okay, we will pause just for a moment to check the status of the system.
Chair Williams, I can hear you as well, but I could not hear Ms. Pettit. Just giving you a heads up on where the volume is working, where it's not in the room. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, Commissioner.
Do you have it on? Yeah.
Good morning, Commissioner Overman.
Can you hear Marvin Knight? Maybe it's on.
Ever so slightly, yes.
Oh, yeah.
She did?
She said slightly, make it really close.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioner Overman.
Good morning. I could hear you that time. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks.
We have budget, in a proposed budget, to upgrade our AV system, so. As you can see, we need an upgrade.
Thanks.
I know.
Thanks.
This isn't deliberate to get approval, just saying. That is on the project list.
Ms. Pettit, are we okay to proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll just go back. We just approved the minutes for May 17th, 2021 and June 21st, 2021. Motion was made by Commissioner Kemp and second by Director Knight, and we had a vote of all in favor. I'll move to public comments. Are there any public comments at this time? Anyone registered? Julia Mandel, do we need to read the public participation at this time since we have no one in line to participate?
We don't need to read it, and in fact, I'm recommending that we just have that as an information item going forward, since I think everybody at this point has gotten used to this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we move to our committee action items, solicitation with resulting contract award. Ms. Audrey Reeves, Contract Specialist 1, you are recognized to present the first action item. Let's go out.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Ms. LeGrand. For the record, I'm Audrey Reeves, Contract Specialist Procurement. Item 4A is a solicitation to construct bus bays, shelter pads, and landing pads at Hillsborough Avenue on the east and west sides of Rome Avenue. This item is included in the package. HART requires construction services to upgrade 2 complementary bus stops to construct shelter pads, landing pads, and sidewalks, along with ADA sidewalk ramp with detectable warnings on the west and east sides of Rome Avenue at the intersection with Hillsborough Avenue. This will be an invitation for bid. The estimated cost is $73,500. And we do not anticipate bringing this item back to the board since it is below the threshold. This will be an SBE set aside. Funding is allocated through the FY 2021 capital budget. We anticipate the award date would be November of 2021. The period of performance would be 90 days from the notice to proceed. We request the committee recommend and advance this item for approval to proceed with the solicitation and contract award to the next Board of Directors meeting. Thank you. Any questions?
Are there any questions or any hands raised? I don't have access to my laptop. It's gone black, so if someone has hands raised, Director Knight, you acknowledge.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. I make a motion that we send it to the full board.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Kemp, did you have a question?
Just a couple comments. And I'm so pleased to see that we're dealing with our bus stops, or especially along Hillsborough Avenue. In 2017, that was when I went to, they had some listening public hearings with just a handful of people that went to each one, and one was at in Town and Country, and a woman came, and there was maybe 3 or 4 people, and it wasn't even part of our questionnaires or anything like that, but she made a huge point. I went and talked to her. They were just allowed to write down comments, and she came there because she said that they were deplorable, our bus stops, and that we really needed to do something to change that. And the main one was Hillsborough Avenue, which is one of our top bus routes and ridership. So I think that's really important. And the other thing I'd just like to add, because it's just come to mind and I don't want to forget it, but I've never done anything about it, was in terms of our, next to many of our bus stops, and maybe now still isn't the time to do it, but there's frequently little benches just out in the open, even if we have a full bus stop, that have a billboard that makes the back, where you would put your bag, a little advertisement. And I understand that those aren't HART, that isn't HART. I mean, I can give you 10 addresses where that is. And before, I just thought, you might as well have them there because you have nothing else there, and it's, homeless, and there's so little else. But I think now if we're going to build better stops and be branding and looking at it, those shouldn't be part of it, because it does look like it's the HART stop. So that might be something that we can just bring your attention to as I'm thinking of it, to start to look into.
Thank you, Commissioner Kemp. Any other questions at this time?
Chair Williams, I do have a quick question regarding the illustration and the description in the item.
Thank you. Commissioner Opperman, you're recognized. Thank you.
Thank you. It does indicate, and this really relates to committee member Kemp's question, it does indicate that this is a bus bay, shelter pads, and landing pads for this location. And so we were looking at a more robust HART stop than we previously have seen at this location. Is that accurate?
I believe Dwayne Brown from PMO, the project manager, is here, Commissioner, and he can speak to that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because it does appear as though there would be something significantly different than the illustrations in the presentation, and I just wanted to get some clarity there.
Yes, ma'am. For the record, my name is Dwayne Brown, project manager with HART, and I'm the BTI, Basic Transit Infrastructure Program Manager. And for this project is very similar to the project that we did on 22nd Street and Hillsborough Avenue, where the bus stop on the south side of the street, it is basically, it's almost where we have patrons sitting in the road, because the way the road is made there's no sidewalk there, and so our patrons are basically sitting in the streets. I have pictures of it. I can bring it up here. So if you can see here, the pictures here on the south side here, you can see on the top, you can see where the bus stop is right now, with one of the benches that Commissioner Kemp brought up, which is a JC's bench, or not JC's, a creative outdoor bench there. But the way the road is made there, I've personally seen where cars are coming up trying to make that right turn onto Hillsborough County, and they are coming like almost into our bus stop there.
Wow.
And so we're trying to protect our patrons, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a sidewalk there with a curb, and we're gonna put a shelter pad on the back of it, because it is a busy bus stop. And we're also gonna fix the stop that's across the street from it. This is complement stop across the street, and bring it up to ADA as well.
Thank you. So I just want to get clarification on the term shelters pad.
So
does that mean there's shelter, or is there just a piece of concrete with a stop there and a correlating outsourced bench that's provided and supported and maintained by the agency that actually puts the benches there?
Okay, so just to clarify, there are two different types of pads. So the first type of pad is a landing pad, and that is where the bus, when it pulls up, it's a spot for for alighting, when people get on and off the bus. That is a flat and stable surface for people to enter and get off the bus. A shelter pad is in the back, and it allows for us to have room in order to get the ADA pad, to make the ADA conditions to put a shelter at that spot, at that location. So the shelter pad will be in the back, and it will be it's different because it has to be a thicker, so it allow for a shelter to be placed on that pad. So those are the two different types. So we are going to put a shelter at this location. It's just that so that's why we're building a pad for it.
Excellent, thank you. That's very helpful. The reason I asked is because there is, in that location, a great distance from other buildings around in the event that it's hot as blazes or pouring down rain. So shelters are always very helpful for those that are waiting for a bus. So thank you very much for your assistance. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any more questions before we move to a vote? Okay, staff will take the vote by name and announce the result, please.
Committee Member Kemp,
Yes.
Committee Member Knight,
Yes.
Committee Member Overman,
Yes.
Chair Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Our next action item is 4B, is presented by Justin Lafleur, our Director of Maintenance. Justin, you acknowledge.
Chair, members of the board, Ms. LeGrand, good morning. My name is Justin Lafleur, Director of Maintenance.
Morning.
I'm here today to give you some information on the fleet and ask you to move along a resolution to align our vehicles with the current service level. Here are the FTA guidelines on the spare bus ratios and contingency fleets. HART is currently over the spare bus ratio. This is due to the high probability of expanded service with the passing of the Alpha Transportation Sales Tax referendum, and because we have recently decreased service. So at this time, HART needs to realign the fleet with the current service level. This is a visualization of the current fleet versus the future proposed state of the fleet. Extra buses have been added to the contingency fleet in case of added future service. This is important because it does take up to 16 months to receive new buses. We are awaiting the delivery of 16 new CNG buses that are supposed to arrive later this year, and further alignment will occur at that time to remain compliant with FTA guidelines. All buses, as well as the paratransit vans and non-revenue vehicles for disposal, have exceeded their useful life. The one streetcar 429, was in an accident in 2020 and was deemed a total loss by the manufacturer. FTA granted approval for this disposal, and the undepreciated value of this car is about $162,000. FTA accepted that the federal interest can be used in a like-kind future replacement. I apologize, this slide has changed a little bit, so I'm going to read the actual committee action item. Is to authorize the CEO to dispose the revenue and non-revenue vehicles through competitive sales, public auction, insurance requirements, donation, or recycling or disposal in such a manner to be most advantageous to HART. And for this committee, the action is the disposal of 31 fixed route buses, 21 paratransit vans, 9 revenue vehicles, and 1 streetcar.
So moved.
Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Second.
By Director Knight, open up for questions at this time. Any questions? Okay. Lena, will you please take a vote and announce the vote result, please?
Committee Member Kemp,
Yes.
Committee Member Knight,
Yes.
Committee Member Overman,
Yes.
Chair Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin. The next action item is presented by Brian Allen, Director of Streetcar Operations.
Good morning, Chair. Members of the
Good morning.
board, Mr. Grant.
I am presenting or seeking approval for the 6th one-year extension of the operator's agreement for the TICA line streetcar system. Tampa Historic Streetcar Inc. contracts with HART to operate the TICA line streetcar system. The current extension of the operator's agreement expires September 30th, 2021. The purpose of this item is to approve the renewal of the 6th one-year extension to the agreement effective October 1st, 2021.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Kemp for motion, second by Director Knight.
Madam Chair.
questions? Excuse me.
Yeah, sorry, I had my hand raised, I just wanted to jump in here.
Sure.
So, and first, thank you for allowing the committee for me to be able to come in and talk. I know I'm not a committee member, but I am the board's appointee to the, it's this one, sorry. Sorry, Commissioner Overman. So thank you for allowing me to be able to come and talk, since I am the HART appointee to the streetcar. I was kind of concerned when I saw this pop up on the agenda and wanted to kind of get a little bit into this. And I'll be also asking some of the same questions at the board meeting once this passes. But so if I'm right here, so this is the 6th time that we have had a 1-year extension of a contract, of this particular contract, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the original contract for this was what, 11 years ago?
Correct.
And we've never gone back to look at the contract.
It is, currently they are looking at the contract, but we needed more time.
So we needed more time to be able to look at it for the 6th time. Okay. So I want to make sure. So HART actually owns the streetcars themselves, correct? Okay. So I'm just kind of, I'm concerned and this is something, as I've been on the streetcar board now, I'm starting to kind of just peel away more layers of the onion here. And I'm really concerned at the fact that, we're, for the 6th time that we are trying to approve a contract and we have not gone in and really kind of started to update this. I can't imagine that's something that happened, a contract that happened 11 years ago. There was no opportunity for some kind of change to this, or at least some improvements to this. And, I think it's something that while I understand that we are obviously out of time, since this is a September 27th, we have to have it done by September 27th, correct, Ms. LeGrand?
That is correct. If I may, Madam Chair. So Director Johnson, you raised some very great questions. I've raised similar questions since I've been here. And what I can share from what staff has updated me on, there were a couple of things that have happened over the last 5 years. One of which was very significant, which was the All for Transportation passage. So if you think about the last 6 years, when the contract expired, we were in the throes of thinking that we were going to have money to do something more than what we're currently doing with the streetcar system. And in anticipation of the passage of the referendum, there were conversations, again, this is what I'm gleaning from staff, about an extension to get through the vote to understand really, what the impact would be to the service and what we were going to do moving forward. Then it passed, so then it was a conversation about we're going to expand the streetcar. So our new contract should reflect a different type of service, more service. Then we had the Supreme Court ruling. So then it was like, okay, extend, because we don't know what the decision is going to be. So I think a part of, again, from my conversation with staff, asking the similar questions that you're posing today, it seems as though there were multiple opportunities to make changes. However, the baseline of what the new contract would look like was in flux, so there was, the decision was made to do extensions. That being said, I have spoken with staff, and it is important that at a minimum, we start having a conversation on a new contract, and in working with staff and legal, putting in provisions so that if something changes, if the next referendum passes and we can do something, make sure we have provisions so that our contract reflects what we're doing today, but we also have the opportunity to make changes if something in the environment, changes for us. So that's the direction that we're looking to move forward. As Mr. Allen stated, they're going through the process now. They're gathering the questions. That was something that I asked staff to come back to me and share with me what were some of the questions and concerns that they had over the last couple of years that needed to be addressed so that we can bring that to this board as well as the streetcar board so we can have a conversation about what were the issues, what do we see as the right approaches to moving forward, and then get with our HART board to make sure that whatever we agree to is in the best interest of HART.
And thank you for that. I understand that there's been a lot of fluidity to that, but to be able to continue extending something like this and literally having the same document for 11 years, it's just something that really irked me when I saw that. I know that I'm sure any of us, in our professional capacities, would never go back and allow a contract to be able to be done for 11 years in the same manner. And I'm certainly not laying that at the feet of previous boards, but I think that it's something that I can guarantee you that I'm going to be watching. I think that the fact that that HART actually owns all of them, all the streetcars, and we are the ones who are going to be, really needing to make sure that this contract is going to be good for HART, and especially with some of the, the things that we do have on the, in the future that's going to be happening between some thoughts or some agreements we have with the city already, potential avenues for additional revenue that's going to be coming. I think it's critical for us to be able to look at this contract, make sure that it's going to be benefiting HART in the way that it needs to be. Thank you for allowing me to chat, Ms. Williams. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Commissioner Kepler recommends.
Thank you for that information. And, I haven't, I'm not very familiar with all that history, so that was good. I'm just wondering from Ms. LeGrand, because it's supposed to expire on September 27th, or because they're asking for it to be renewed at that time, I don't know when the prior one expires, but would your thoughts be to do something like extend it for maybe another 6 months to kind of put some urgency around this, or what would your thoughts be about it?
So, my thoughts are if the board is willing to approve it for a year, I think that's appropriate. And the reason why I state that is, as Director Johnson said, there has been a lot of fluidity for the last 5 years. However, we are engaged actively with the city on talking about the streetcar. Mr. Allen and myself and Ms. Wright have met with the city leadership, and we have standing meetings with them to really talk about how we move forward. And we feel that through those conversations, as well as with our list of, areas that we need to get addressed, it would be in our best interest to use this time to thoroughly discuss it, to make the changes to the contract that will be necessary, and then hopefully we'll be able to negotiate a contract. And if we do our work sooner, I'm sure we'll be able to have a contract ready that we can present for execution prior to the 1-year period. But it is our objective to make sure that we, as I would say, cross all the T's and dot all the I's and bring back information to the board in a way that we're not just telling you what we want to do, but asking for your guidance and ensuring that we're doing the right thing.
I can very much appreciate that, because there's, as we know, a plan to extend the streetcar to, I don't know, maybe do some other, I hear modernization, I don't know. There's never quite a budget, but that's going to have to be, in order to get federal funding, that's going to have to be something that HART shepherds through and takes responsibility for, and that's whether there's future resources will be important, but even with those resources, important in how we look at allocations in our budget and move forward on something, because it's very, very expensive. And so it will have to be, considered, and I think it's a really good time now to start really looking at how that pairs in to what we do in the future, strategic planning, and how we allocate our resources and what we look at. So it would make a lot of sense to be looking at this in a different way. I guess I was a little more focused on the interlocal agreement and what that said, but this going forward would be, I guess that is the interlocal agreement we're talking about when we talk about the contract here.
Right, so, and I'll allow Mr. Allen to add more if I miss anything, but the contract that we have right now is a contract to operate and maintain the streetcar system. So that's what we're asking for, the extension for that contract. So as Director Johnson said, we do own the assets, but it's more about, our operation and maintenance agreement with the city. and the Tampa Historic Streetcar, and the arrangements that are associated with that contract. That's what we're going over.
And then would the interlocal agreement be more broad than that as well? Or,
Yes, I believe it is.
right, because it would do this, but it would also, in terms of the other aspects of the streetcar, I guess, I mean, I never really had thought about the two of them separately. I had been before focused in thinking about the interlocal agreement, so I guess that as well kind of dovetails in some ways into this.
And what we can do at the next meeting, we can give you an update on the nuances between the contract as well as the interlocal agreement. And as I stated, staff is cataloging all of our comments, and we'll provide those to you as well associated with the current contract.
Thank you, Director Knight, you recognized.
Make sure my understanding right, so by extending this another year, that give us the flexibility and to work out the details or whatever and come to a consensus. So that was in line, we don't have to worry about another month or so, we're running out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right. Ms. Pettit, will you please take a vote and announce the results, please?
Committee Member Kemp?
Yes?
Committee Member Knight?
Yes.
Committee Member Overman? Committee Member Overman?
She says she can't hear.
I'm assuming you're asking me to vote on this. I couldn't hear any of that, but thank you. Yes.
Chair Williams?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Allen. We're moving on to discussion items. Linda Crescentini, Director of Project Management Office, will give an update on Flamingo Affairs Program Project. We talked about that earlier, and here's the update. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Ms. LeGrand. Linda Crescentini, I'm the Director of the Project Management Office. And this morning, I would like to answer some questions that were requested in the April 19th Finance and Audit Committee as it relates to the Flamingo Fair project. So with that said, items for discussion. Oops, sorry. Okay, so the topics for discussion today are an update on the project cost sharing, an update on the system technology, to present the fair adoption rate as well as ridership, and at the conclusion, we will be discussing a way forward. So let's start with the project cost sharing specifically for capital. There's 5 systems, including T-BORDA, that have been participating in the project. To the left, you can see the agencies. We have HART, FTA, T-BORDA, PCPT, which is Pasco, the bus, which is Hernando, SCAT, which is Sarasota. According to the original MOUs, the cost sharing is between HART and PSTA. Along the top, you can see the federal, state, and local contributions for the total percentages. And the total percent for HART cost sharing to date for the capital projects is 60%. PSTA is 38%, with a 2% contribution for T-BARDA. PCPT and the bus, we'll discuss later, will begin their contributions during the operation and maintenance of the program. So what exactly is in the capital investment? What does that support? That supports all of the onboard wiring of the vehicles as well as the processors. It's all the sales and sales support equipment. It's the system interface software. It's the back office design and deployment. Fair media, mobile ticketing design, IVR, which is the interactive voice response system, and open payments design, as well as a lot of training for staff. Let's look at the project cost sharing for the O&M, operation and maintenance. So accordance with the contract, HART agreed to pay for the first year of the operation and maintenance. Moving forward, the agencies to the left that will be participating is HART, PSTA, PCPT, and the bus. We did receive a letter from Sarasota requesting in May that they would no longer participate in the Flamingo program effective July 31st, so they're not on this. But if you look, the good news is PSTA has committed to a contribution of $685,000 beginning October 1st, the new date of the fiscal year. So the percentage of the operation and maintenance cost sharing will be HART with 42%, PSTA with 52%, PCPT 4%, and the bus, it's almost 1%. So these costs are estimated, and the percentage may deviate slightly just based on usage of the system. So what's included in the project cost sharing for the operation and maintenance? The operation and maintenance support includes 24/7 system monitoring, card import process, fare management, back office software support, all of our hardware warranties, our hosting services, the support for mobile ticketing, as well as support for the IVR system and the support for the open payments. For an update on the system technology, staff, this is a work in progress, and staff will continue automated fare collection system due diligence. We'll compare the Flamingo technology to the industry's best practices. And one of the opportunities that allows us to do that is we can engage with technology companies at the two APTA-sponsored events that you see there, the APTA Tech Conference, October 3rd through the 6th in Philadelphia, and the APTA Transform Conference Expo, November 7th through the 10th in Orlando, Florida, right next door. There may be other opportunities to review the technology, and we will stay engaged and take advantage of these opportunities as they present themselves. Let's look at the adoption rate. Flamingo had a soft launch in February of 2020, but at that time we had COVID. So the official launching of the program, and you can see the marketing star over January of 2021. That's when marketing became engaged in the process. So what you really want to follow on this slide is the black line, and the black line shows the adoption rate. So since marketing has been engaged, our numbers have started to climb. Just in this past May, we were at 3% adoption rate. June, we were at 4%. July, we doubled, we went to 9.3%. And currently, just in the beginning of August, we're at 12.1% adoption rate. So you can see that black line going straight up on the far right-hand side of your screen. One of the other key factors to that is the retail network. On the star that mentions retail network in July, the retail network is opening up easy access for our customers to buy and reload their product on their cards. The goal is to have a location within a quarter mile of our heaviest routes for ease of access for our customers. And I'm proud to announce as of today, we have 294 locations across the region that are actively selling and reloading cards that support the program. So in conclusion, the way forward, staff will continue to evaluate the automated fare system collection technology that we have today. Our marketing of Flamingo will continue. We will continue to engage with our regional partners. As noted, PSTA will start contributions of the $685,000 for the operation and maintenance cost sharing beginning October 1st. And I will be presenting the operation and maintenance agreement at the September 27th board meeting. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Recognized.
Thank you. I have many questions. And I had some issues over the years with Flamingo because we had a lot of false starts with it and then couldn't seem to get it off the ground. I wish we had this background information here too. Then another company, Clever Consulting, I guess Entities developed Flamingo, Clever Consulting then was brought in to try to get this off the ground. There's still a lot of time, and I mean like a year or something in terms of that. And I think something like $14 million that was spent in the past in development of the system not by HART, but by FDOT, as I understand it, in past reports, and I don't see any background here. That would be, I think, valuable to see. So now, I guess what we have is the card with continued operating and maintenance costs of here, it looks like, is that $1,088,000 a year? Is that what the numbers were there? Maybe you could bring that up again.
Yes, the 1.3 million for the project cost sharing of the operation and maintenance would be HART's percent, like as noted, is the 42%, and PSTA's cost sharing is the 52% going forward.
Okay, I'll bring, initially too, it was supposed to be shared by many more partners throughout the region, and as has been noted here, Sarasota, I guess, dropped out of this, so they're not going to take part of those costs. And what is the bus, by the way, on this?
The bus is Hernando, PCPT is Pasco, and the bus is Hernando.
Okay, so Hernando's still going to be involved for 1%, Pasco for 4%, PSTA for 52%, and this is in fiscal year '22.
That's correct.
And HART for 42%, $550,000 a year. So how are those percentages determined? Just
They're estimated percentages. It's based on the number of vehicles in the taps. It's the usage of the system. That's how the cost is distributed. So like we mentioned, when these are estimated costs because they may deviate just a little bit based on actual usage. So these are the best estimates that we have today.
is the 9% adoption rate, is that throughout all these 4 jurisdictions?
That is specific to HART.
That is specific to HART, a 9% adoption rate. And the adoption rate is based on, is a percentage of our, what is that?
We're looking at rides, right? We're looking at the rides. So when you look at rides from Flamingo, it's either using a smartphone or a tap from a smart card versus the GFI information. And the GFI information is everything else that's collected through the fare box.
So if I'm one rider and I take the bus, transfer, which is common, so that's like, we charge typically 2 tickets for that, and then do the same thing back. So 4 different taps in a day. So that plays into creating the 9%?
That's correct, because it's ridership. It's every time you board the bus. So when you board a vehicle, whether you pay in cash or whether you pay by Flamingo, it's the actual tap or ride.
So we don't know, I assume, I'm thinking it's probably far less when we think about the number of our riders who actually use the system.
Well, this would be the usage. It's tracked every day. Our retail manager is keeping track of the current numbers that are provided by service planning, as well as the data that comes out of the Flamingo program itself. So this is actually. This would be
based on a number of rides, not number of people.
So if I may, Commissioner Camp, I understand your question. You're asking, the data that we're presenting is showing the number of times a person may utilize the Flamingo product. And your question is, does that translate into the number of people who own or are using the Flamingo product? It does not, because in reality, we could have, multiple people with the Flamingo product that may not tap, and we don't know that they have this product. Or we can have someone who has a card, and for example, if I had a Flamingo card as one person, and I used it, and then I had a ride home, but Director Williams needed to use my card, and I gave it to her, she could use it. So there's certain things that we have to work out. So the intention here is not to make the case as far as how many people actually have the card in their possession, and for us now to start, based on the data we have access to understand, compared to all of the payment types that we're receiving for rides, whatever the total amount is, how many of those are coming from taps on Flamingo versus coming from people either paying by cash or using some other legacy product. And that's what we're showing. And then that increase over the last couple of months to 9% is showing that we are now seeing an uptick in people starting to use the Flamingo product in addition to using our traditional method. Your question is a good question, because if you look at those numbers, we do have the vast majority of our community using the traditional fair media products. And in order for us to get to a point where we see those numbers really surpass the 50% mark, we have to make some decisions. And some of those decisions would be continuing to talk to the providers and understanding the technology and understanding if what we're doing with Flamingo, that technology is the best and most economical for HART. But what I can say, we do believe that making a transition from our traditional fair media product to a more mobile and account-based product is definitely the direction that we'd like to go. Our questions are we using the right technology to get there? And then the onus is on HART to market it appropriately. So we cannot use, a timid approach of getting out to the community. We have to be very aggressive. These are our customers, so we know what some of the concerns are, and we need to address those concerns and get the community comfortable with using this product. So there are two different actions. One is to educate our community on the transition from our traditional fair media approach to a more electronic fair media approach. So that's one. And then the other is for us as HART to determine what's the best technology out there. Is it the technology that we're currently getting from Flamingo, or is there something else out there that's better suited and more economical for HART?
So I'll say this. I know this is coming before the Finance Committee as a finance item, but also I think it might be good to have a bearing on background of this. Okay, so traditionally, before Flamingo, and I assume still currently operating, would be that when a person gets on a bus in Hillsborough County, they can pay $2 in cash, two $1 bills for a trip. Or they have another opportunity, if I'm not mistaken, to purchase a card from a number of places where they can pay cash there. And it might be good for this, not for me to be reciting this, but for this to be part of a presentation that's made to the board. And then to look at, they have those, people paying cash, people paying the card, and then I guess Flamingo gives you the extended option to do this besides a card or cash, which we already have, to do it electronically. That would be on a smartphone, for instance. And so we're looking at this point, it looks like 12% adoption rate. And I have a couple of questions, because what that means is 88%, and not that they wouldn't adopt it. And I think let me start by saying this. I think it's great to move into this. I think it's important. What I want to understand is, and it's kind of what you had said, are there, especially since this has been going on for so long, are there other available options that may not be this one? How is this, like expensing this out, does this compare? I mean, a lot of systems have this around the country, so maybe there's a way that we could be using a system that's already someplace else where we could have lower operation costs. This was signed up for 5 years ago. So, I'd like that comparison. I'd like to understand, first, we want to move into this possibility. But second, can we get, for instance, a better system, a better deal by, not continuing with this? I don't know. Maybe this is half the price and twice the efficiency of others. But I think it's important for us as we move forward to understand and know that and have that analysis. My other concern is that my aide, who is a strong bus rider, but has been trying to hasn't been doing that as much during COVID, got a Flamingo pass, was excited, went onto the bus, and, tried to use her pass. She had her money in there, and it didn't work. And it seemed as though the operator had that experience frequently. So she would be considered an adopter, I guess, and she's got her money in the account, but she can't use the pass. And the bus driver, because they didn't want to hold up the bus, and she didn't want to hold up the bus, just said, get on, so she just did. She actually felt bad about not paying HART for the ride, but it seemed like there might be some issues like that. I don't know how frequent that is, but I think that needs to be looked at. The other thing that I still find objectionable that apparently did 5 years ago was say that HART and only HART would take the cost of $4 million for the next fiscal year to pay for this system, which still I just would like to know if anything can be done with regards to, if we're going to stay in this for now, keeping the system, what our options are if we find another system with regards to canceling this and moving with, maybe a service that is already being provided in other areas that we can get for less, since we're paying the 100% on the first year, if that is true, if that isn't negotiated any longer. So while I feel like, we certainly want to move into a future with this, and my other concern is equity. Because there's been a lot of talk about equity. So 88% of people that are on our system can't use this right now, aren't using it right now. And that might change with marketing, and there might be other possibilities. But if we're paying $1 million or even $500,000, is that the system is paying for that. So that impacts all riders and what they get. So I'm just thinking about that as well. And those are kind of my outline of my questions about Flamingo. Not that, again, I'd very much like to move into the future and figure out what we can do, but I think it should be cost effective. We shouldn't be paying an oversized portion if we do that. We should be looking at other possibilities. We should be looking at if we can, if there's other companies that we can contract for these services with that would be more, cost effective and work better. So I'm not, I just have those issues out there if we could pursue those.
So if I may, those are all great points. Those are conversations that we've been having internally. So what we'd like, with our ask is, one, we wanted to present the information today and take back any questions that you may have, so that between today and September 27th, we can communicate and share updates electronically with any questions, and then be prepared on the 27th to update everyone on what has happened and ask for approval for FY22. That being said, our work does not stop there. because we have to work very aggressively to get from where we will be October 1 of '22 to really have responses on the best way forward going into '23. One thing I do want to share that has been updated since April is that we have been engaging with the partners. We've had several meetings. I have had meetings on the executive level. Staff has had meetings on the staff level, and we were able to make some changes. So what you see here today with FY22, instead of HART having, 94% of the cost in FY22, PSTA has jumped in and they have committed to start their contribution early, which is October 1 of '21. So I do want to officially thank the CEO there at PSTA, Brad Miller, for working with us to find solutions. In addition, on the executive level, we are working for all of the agencies that are participating to find ways to reduce the cost, because none of us are in a position where we can spend money inefficiently. So we are collectively working on a strategy to see if there's a way that we can reduce our costs. But, and that work will continue as well. But again, I ask at the September board meeting will be approval for FY22. I want to commend our staff for listening to your questions and going back. And instead of us presenting to you, I think when we met in April, I think our ask was 1.3 million or something like that. So we've gone from that to $552,000. So again, that's our contribution, although the contract is with HART and the provider, so the total contract amount will still be the 1.3, but again, the difference in this conversation is it's more of a split between HART and the partners instead of HART taking on all of that. So just wanted to provide to you a little bit of the detail of what has changed since April, and then we're continuing to do our due diligence to find out and answer your question as far as technology.
Thank you. And it might, as I said, too, be valuable, I think, just for a refresh, for everyone to understand how a rider currently pays and what's available, pre-Flamingo, and how that would work and how that pairs with Flamingo as well.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions, Commissioner Kemp. And Joanne, do you have another update? This is a discussion, if you will present another update regarding the 2022 budget. Okay, thank you, Joanne. Mrs. Crestastini?
Yes, good morning, Chair
Good morning.
Williams, members of the Finance and Audit Committee, and Ms. LeGrand. For the record, this is Joanne Caceres, Director of Budget and Grants for HART. This is the third presentation I will bring before you. On June 21st, I presented the fiscal year 22 preliminary budget to you, and then on August 2nd to the HART Board. Today, I want to continue discussions on the fiscal year 22 tentative HART budget. I will briefly cover the operating revenues and expenses. Then we will spend most of the presentation covering the tentative capital plan. So this is the agenda for today's presentation. I will respond to various questions raised by the board in our August 2nd board meeting. Then, as stated, I will cover a brief overview of the operating revenues and expenses. That will be followed by the capital plan, where I will cover the capital revenues and expenditures, the budgeted projects. Then the team will cover the vehicle replacement program and the bus stops and shelters program briefly. We will conclude with the next steps for the review and the adoption of the budget. So one of the questions that the board raised was about the infrastructure bill of 2021. We obtained input from the legislative group, and their statement was, and I will read it for you, it's up on the slide. Analysis of new funding shows the bill increases each of the formula and competitive grant programs by 35 through 37% compared to current levels, and increases overall public transit funding about 63% from current levels. This is, again, their statement. They also mentioned that the process is still ongoing as the bill now rests in the House. And also, the House is set to meet the last week of August. So we can say that it is not final. So we do not foresee that the fiscal year 22 budget will be impacted by this bill. And if it does materialize, we will come back to the board for discussion. On this slide, we have the tentative fiscal year 22 capital budget includes various planning and studies, which were listed on the slide. This is also a question that came from one of the board members. The question arose because of the decrease that was presented when they compared from the fiscal year 22 budget to the fiscal year 21. And we can see here that the list starts from the studies from the Tampa Arterial Corridor, which is the BRT study, and we list them all through the CSX feasibility study. One thing I did want to mention was that the reduction that was noticed in the last presentation incurred because of the expenses that from the original amount for the budget. We have some expenses incurred in these projects during the fiscal year 21. And unlike the operating budget, any uncompleted projects from the fiscal year 21 capital budget will roll over to fiscal year 22. So on this slide, we did want to mention that, which is one of the concerns or the comments made also, that we are always looking for ways or opportunities to engage corporate partners, and are currently working to increase our partnerships. There was a question about historical changes in revenues and expenses. So this slide summarizes the actual revenues, and the next slide summarizes the actual expenses from fiscal year 2017 through fiscal year 2020. And it also includes the fiscal year 21 and 22 budget. This slide is a summary of the operating expenses by category. And I did want to reference the net changes, since we did have the slide of the revenues, and now this is the expenses. That for fiscal year 17, expenses exceeded revenues by 8%, or 5.8 million. In fiscal year 18, expenses and revenues were 76,000. Revenues were 76. This was the year of the 7.6 thousand, yes. This was the year of the service modification due to Mission Max. And fiscal year 17 expenses exceed revenues by 4%, or $3.3 million. And for fiscal year 20, revenues exceeded expenses by 12%, or $11.9 million. And this was due to the CARES Act funds that was received. So with regards to the fund balance reserves, we still expect to begin fiscal year 22 with an operating reserves of 15.1 million, or 57% of the reserves, goal of $26 million. In our September meeting, we will provide the estimate of where we expect the operating reserves will be at the end of fiscal year '22. With that, we finalized the questions that were asked in the last board meeting. So here in this chart, we have the total operating revenues by revenue source and the percent that these represent within the total budget. So the fiscal year '22 operating revenues are budgeted at $105 million, which is $6.3 million greater than the fiscal year '21 projection, or an increase of 6.4%. So on this chart is, we have the total operating expenses by expense category and the percent that these costs represent within the total budget. I'm discussing the operating revenues and expenses briefly because with regards to the expenses, there has been no change since they were presented to the Finance and Audit Committee back in June. The fiscal year '22 operating expenses are budgeted at $105 million, which is $6.3 million greater than the fiscal year '21 projection, or an increase of 6.4%. So this is a summary on this slide of the fiscal year '22 tentative capital budget of $63 million for both revenues and expenses. Funding the capital program is a combination of federal, state, and local grants. And HART also will contribute $8.3 million. These are the capital revenues by source. The primary funding source is federal, which represents $45 million or 71% of the total capital budget. All other sources are $17.9 million or 29% of the total budget. So these are the expenditures by project categories. This tentative capital plan includes $23.2 million in rolling stock and maintenance, or 37% of the total capital budget, $16.3 million in facilities and construction, $11.4 million in technology, $3.5 million in bus stops and shelters, $3 million in planning and studies, and $5.4 million in other project categories. So on the next 4 slides is the tentative list of capital projects for each category that is included in the summary that was just presented to you. This list includes projects that were started in fiscal year '21 that have not been fully completed, as well as new projects for fiscal year '22. So on this slide, it lists projects that are included under the category of rolling stock and maintenance for $23.2 million. This slide lists projects included in the categories of facilities and construction for a total of $16.3 million. And this slide lists the projects included in the categories of technology, bus stops and shelters, and planning and studies. Did want to mention that the CSS feasibility study is the last project on this slide, and under the budget amount, there is $0. That is not an error. That is because we plan to have this study completed with in-house staff. So this slide lists the projects included in the categories of safety and security, maintenance and equipment, non-revenue vehicles, and reserve for contingencies. Again, the project cost of the tentative capital budget is $63 million. We do have a brief update on the vehicle replacement plan, which will be presented by our Director of Maintenance and Facilities, Justin Laffler, and followed by him, Dwayne Brown, Program Manager for HART, will provide an update on the bus stops and shelter program.
Good morning again, Justin Loeffler, Director of Maintenance. So you've seen this sheet before. This is our fixed route vehicle replacement plan. I briefed a little bit earlier about the 16 new buses that are on order and will be received later this year. After that, we'll only have 7 vehicles that are currently past their useful life. And that's it. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Directors, Mr. Grant. I'm Dwayne Brown, Project Manager for HART. I'm the BTI, Basic Transit Infrastructure Program Manager, and I will be giving you an update on bus shelters, our bus stops and bus shelter programs. The current number of stops are based upon the last markup we did in June of 2021. The current shelters is based upon the 2019 internal bus stop study that we accomplished, that the PMO office accomplished. The last official bus stop study that we conducted was in 2007. In its finding, there were approximately 4,000 bus stops, of which 2,734 needed ADA improvement. With Mission Max, route realignments, and bus stop improvements and consolidations over the years, we have considerably decreased the number of active bus stops needing to be brought up to ADA standards. Currently, we have 341 shelters that have met their useful life, and of which 194 are owned by HART and need to be replaced. If you have any questions.
I don't know that I have questions, but that's a very good change in the direction of the numbers, and it looks like good work is being done, and just the next steps as you continue to read out and move forward over the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to mention that the list of the capital projects were handed out to each and every one of the members so that you can reference. Because I did go quickly through the slides, I just wanted to make sure that you had it in hand. Thank you. So over the next month, we will continue to review the budget and bring the proposed or the tentative budget for approval following a public hearing on September 13th. On September 27th, the plan is to hold the final public hearing and then ask the board to adopt the final millage rate and the fiscal year 22 annual budget. I did want to mention also today that the September 13th public hearing, followed by a board meeting, will be held at the Hillsborough Community College in Ybor at 5:30. So I did want to make reference to that it will not be in the county building, that it will be in the Hillsborough Community College. Now on September 27th, the public hearing followed by the board meeting will be held at the county building at 5:30. So this concludes our presentation, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Commissioner Kipper, recognized.
Just a small one, actually, but it just caught my attention that I thought it was under the capital expenses, $1 million for Flamingo.
We have, under the capital expenses, I think it's $1,030,000. I don't know what slide it's on, but there is $1,039,000.
Right, and so that's distinct from the operations.
Correct.
Because we'd have to put in some kind of infrastructure in our buses in order to use it, is that it?
Linda, you can answer that, please.
Yes, so that's the capital that's remaining for the Flamingo project. That relates specifically to the open payment that's still under design right now. Those charges, that's full grant funding that's related to that million. It's not a request for an additional million.
I see. Is it to put in infrastructure in our buses, or is that to do that? And I think you maybe just addressed that, but the architecture of the program?
That's correct. It's not new equipment per se, but it's related to the project. So the project-related expenses that related to capital are captured on the capital sheet. So that's why you'll see it in, two places, for the capital and for the operating, like we just discussed.
Okay. And just to be clear about what my aide, when she had trouble, she was trying to scan in her phone on the bus, the pass on the phone.
Can we can we talk to her? I mean, after we'll get with Lena and
Yeah, of course.
make sure. Okay. Thank you.
Is that it, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Thanks, Brian and Dwayne. Thank you for your presentation, and thanks, Brian and Dwayne, as well. This is really good detailed information. It gives us a chart that we can go back and reference as well. And I think this provides us with much better clarity as you're going through the presentation. Thank you so much. Are there any questions at this time? I'll move on to old business. Any new business? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.